Good morning and a very happy 2024 to everybody out there. I hope you all had a wonderful week of festivities, holiday, and family. A couple of fun facts about the year 2024 to get warmed up. It is indeed a leap year, so shout out to the roughly 4 million leaplings, I think they call you, worldwide. Also, the Summer Olympics will be held in Paris later this summer. That should be fun. And of course, we can look forward to a clean, loving, and respectable presidential campaign. But let's not overlook the color of the year. According to housebeautiful.com, 2024's color of the year is, drumroll please, peach fuzz. Quote, a light, delicate shade that sits between pink and orange. Peach Fuzz marks the 25th anniversary of Pantone's Color of the Year program. This soft, heartfelt hue expresses the desire to nurture kindness, compassion, and connection, all while fostering a deep coziness as we seek a peaceful future. End quote. I would call it salmon. So yeah, that's basically what we have to look forward to in 2024, summed up. Moving on. Today, I bring you the disappearance of Gina Renee Hall. My name is Eli, and this is Murder in the Morning. Gina Renee Hall was last seen alive by her friends on June 28, 1980, after going out to a nightclub in Radford, Virginia. Near the end of the night, another man by the name of Stephen Epperly from a similar friend group, however they had never met before that night, invited Gina back to his friend's cabin for a midnight swim. She hesitantly agreed and left with Stephen. That would be the last time anyone saw Gina. According to one article, Gina Hall, who was 18 at the time, is described as a very beautiful, well-dressed, pleasant, soft-spoken young woman who was popular with her peers, respectful of her parents, close to her older sister Diana, whom she was living with at the time in Radford, Virginia. She also loved to dance and was quite athletic. Friends and family recalled that Gina may have liked an occasional glass of wine, but she never smoked or used drugs. In short, Gina was a, quote, very happy person. She certainly was not the sort to simply disappear. When Gina was a young girl, she was seriously burned and had scars on her right side from her upper arm to her thigh. This caused her to be self-conscious, and while she was friendly and outgoing, her self-consciousness kept her from becoming physically intimate. Gina's sister would later testify that she was extremely concerned about how the scars would affect a man's feelings for her, and as a result, she could not have handled the emotional stress of a physical relationship with somebody and never put herself in that situation, end quote. In addition, she had expressed concern once about becoming pregnant because of her skin grafts. The reason for revealing such intimate facts and really personal information about this innocent victim, it will become more evident shortly. It was late June, and the sisters were taking summer classes at the university, where Gina was a freshman and her sister Diana was in graduate school. So Gina had just finished summer midterms and was in a great mood. She wanted to go dancing, but Diana was a little bit too tired. Instead, Diana offered Gina her brown Chevrolet and watched as her 5-foot-tall sister adjusted the seat as far forward as it would go before she headed out of the Marriott building in Blacksburg, Virginia, for a night of music and dancing with friends. It was about 10 p.m., Saturday night, June 28th, 1980. That was the last time anyone ever saw Gina alive. The next morning, after never making it home, her sister Diana started calling friends to check on her sister. They told her what we knew, that Gina had left with a kid by the name of Stephen. Although Stephen wasn't really a kid, he was in his later 20s at this time, a much older man, but still, I believe, a student of the university. It's unsure when, but soon Gina is reported missing and police become involved. The car that she had been driving that night, a brown Chevrolet, was found abandoned near a railroad trestle and a river, with the trunk open and the driver's seat pushed very far back. Gina's sister and friends noticed this almost immediately since she was a small girl and obviously rode very close to the wheel. Soon, the media grabbed a hold of this missing teen story, and word spread like wildfire around Radford, quickly reaching Stephen Epperly and his friend with the cabin, Bill King. Bill King told Stephen that they should go to the police and share his story, saying that maybe he could help find Gina since he may have been the last person to see her alive. Instead of heading to the police, Stephen went to a different friend whose older brother was an attorney. He proceeded to ask him if his older brother would maybe represent him and, quote, if they could do anything without a body. Basically the opposite of what any decent or innocent person would do. Thankfully, Bill had a little bit more sense about him, and he went to the police the following day to share what he knew. He told detectives that a few hours after Stephen and Gina headed to the cabin, he and another girl decided to do the same. Quote, when the couple arrived, they saw Gina's brown Chevrolet in the driveway, but no lights on in the house. They didn't want to surprise anyone, so when they entered, they slammed the doors and turned on the kitchen light, hopefully giving Stephen and Gina, if they needed it, time to compose themselves. Stephen Epperly called out, Bill, is that you? King replied that it was and that he and his date were going swimming. Epperly responded, quote, she's got to be getting back, and indicated that they were leaving. The woman with Bill saw Epperly standing without a shirt, drying himself off with a towel. Neither Bill nor his date saw or heard Gina that night. End quote. After sharing what he knew, Bill showed the officers up to the cabin where this all took place and allowed them to take a look inside, seemingly with nothing to hide on his end. What police find is, well, they found a lot. According to a source, they discovered bloodstains on the driveway, on a walkway leading to the lake, and inside the house. The interior of the home had been meticulously cleaned, but not sufficiently enough to escape the criminalists who sourced the scene. They found blood and hair on a golf shoe, blood on a dustpan, and blood and hair in the gasket of a refrigerator door. A large blood stain more than a foot across was found inside the living room and had been bleached out to a faint pink. Testimony later showed that there had never been bloodstains in any of those locations before. Searchers looking for Gina discovered a blue bloodstained towel near where the Chevy had been found. It contained fibers consistent with those found in the carpet at the lake house. Bill King's mother later identified this towel as one that was missing from her home. Nearby, a policeman found one of Gina's shoes at the opposite end of the trestle from where the car and the towel had been found. 2 weeks later, other searchers found all of the clothes Gina had worn the night she vanished. They were tied in a bundle and were bloodstained. Forensic testing showed that all of the blood on the recovered evidence was human type O, the same as Gina's. The hair found in the golf cleat was identified as human pubic hair. However, that pubic hair did not match Stephen Epperly's, who had now become an official suspect. In the trunk of the Chevrolet, investigators found type O blood and head hairs similar to the ones found on a hairbrush used by Gina. The blue towel also contained type O blood and held 6 hairs, again, similar to Gina's. Finally, on the bundle of bloody clothes they found, forensic scientists were able to find a head hair similar to that of Stephen Epperly's. Naturally, police went on to interview Stephen and find out what was going on. His story was a simple one. He told officers that he had driven Gina from the nightclub to the lake house. He said that he heard her call her sister Diana, to tell her that she would be home in the morning. He said that they went out to the dock and that he went swimming, but Gina never got in. He admitted that they had kissed a little bit here and there, but he said that Gina told him she would not, she would have to know him much better before she would sleep with him. Then he left the house, Gina dropped him off in Radford, and he went to bed and never saw her again. That simple. No witnesses, no real time frame, no one to corroborate his story, just a one-sided account that all happened in the wee hours of the morning in the dark. As police continue investigating and searching for Gina, Stephen himself began acting weirder and weirder. And once Bill King found out that Stephen had been asking about an attorney, he straight up asked his friend if he had killed Gina. Epperly said, and I quote, "Bill, I don't know anything about it. We'll just have to wait and see." I would leave the room that instant. He fucking, of course, why would you say we'll have to wait and see? You either did it or you didn't. Here comes my favorite part of the story, and probably yours. The tracking dogs. According to an article from markgribben.com, quote, "The most amazing circumstantial evidence that pointed to Epperly's involvement in her disappearance came with the arrival of a tracking dog owned by John Preston, a retired Pennsylvania state trooper who was qualified as a dog tracking expert in courts across 17 states. Along with his German Shepherd, Preston had worked on more than 150 criminal cases across the U.S. He and his dog arrived a week after Epperly had first been accused by police of having killed Gina. But the ex-trooper was not told by Virginia authorities that they had a suspect. Neither Preston nor the dog had ever been to the Radford area before, and they wanted them to know as little as possible. Police secured a warrant for an article of Epperly's clothing, and then Preston and the Virginia authorities returned to where Gina's car had been left and let the shepherd acquire the scent from the clothing. The dog then began what is known as a, quote, casting search, passing back and forth in an ever-widening arc in an attempt to pick up the scent. The dog picked up the suspect's smell about 100 yards from where the Chevy had been found, near that railroad trestle and river. The dog then left the road and started walking alongside the railroad tracks. He led his handlers on a roundabout tour of Radford, touching each location where searchers had found the items related to the missing girl. John Preston would later testify that the dog indicated the scent had paused at 3 locations, as if the person had spent some time at each point. These pauses occurred at each place evidence had been recovered. From the tracks, the dog followed the trail through a box factory, a railroad switching yard, across the parking lot of New River Valley, and a self-service car wash. Finally, the dog entered a subdivision, walked up to the front door of a house, and sat down. The dog stopped on the front porch of Stephen Epperly's home. At his front fucking porch. You cannot get more specific than that. He continues, the next day, the dog was again given Epperly's scent and introduced to 6 blue towels, including one that had been found near Gina's car. The dog immediately sat down in front of the blue towel found by the searchers in the woods. That towel not only contained blood of the same type of the missing girl, Gina, and carpet fibers consistent with those found at the beach house, but it also contained a scent consistent with Stephen's. This is the best part right here. Stephen Epperly was being interviewed by Radford police at the station the next day when Preston and the dog showed up. While the suspect was inside, the dog, quote, scented on the blue towel. He then poked around the parking lot, which contained many other cars, and stopped at the driver's side door of Stephen Epperly's car. The dog then picked up the trail from the car to the police station and came directly to the door of the interrogation room where the suspect was sitting. Absolutely amazing. After the Radford police told Epperly what the dog had done, he put his head down in his arms and said over and over, "That's a damn good dog." It's actually so crazy. The dog followed his scent from where she disappeared to the suspect's front porch to the actual foot of the man detectives knew to be responsible. What a good boy. Soon after, Epperly was charged and indicted for the murder of Gina Renee Hall. The only problem, investigators still had no body, and most evidence, however great it was, is circumstantial. No one had ever been convicted of murder without a body in the state of Virginia, and only 3 times previous total in the United States. The state would need to prove that Gina was indeed dead, and that her death had resulted from a criminal act on the part of Epperly. Plus, to sustain this conviction, the state had to demonstrate that Epperly had the specific intent to kill. However difficult this would be, they pressed on and went to trial anyway. According to a source, quote, the state of Virginia presented its case to the jury, pointing out Gina's sudden disappearance, the evidence at the lake house of a violent struggle, the pains the killer made to hide the evidence by disposing of her clothes and the bloodstained towels, Epperly's discussions with his friends, and the unimpeachable evidence of the tracking dog. These circumstances, taken together, indicted in the state's view, these circumstances, taken all together, indicated in the state's view that Gina Hall had been murdered and that Stephen Epperly had killed her. The jury agreed and convicted him of first-degree murder. On appeal, the verdict and the life sentence were reaffirmed. End quote. Stephen Epperly was sent away to rot in prison. This is justice, yes, but the family still didn't have their little girl back. She remained missing. And for 4 decades, Gina's body would stay undiscovered. In recent years, a forensic team, along with the help of Gina's sister, Diana Hall, now Bodmer, has uncovered some of her remains. According to WDBJ7 News, in 2016, Diana Bodmer said a farmer's grandson reported to the Radford Police Department that his family had held a secret since 1980. He said his grandfather had witnessed what he believed to be two men dismembering a body in Meadow Creek, and they were driving a white van, and he believed the woman to be Gina Hall. That's what sparked her journey for Gina's body. Diana remarked, and that's when the miracles began. That's when the truth came unveiled. That's when the pieces of the puzzle started showing up and just started fitting together, and I now have the truth. Despite a conviction for the murderer, she still wants this closure. That's why last year, a vigil for Gina brought on a new sense of hope. Diana was introduced to Dr. Arpad Vass, a forensic anthropologist who had invented an instrument to help detect DNA buried beneath the surface of the ground. Since then, Gina's remains have been discovered across 8 locations throughout the New River Valley area using this device. They found Gina's DNA on top of Draper Mountain, at the lake house on Clater Lake, off Hazel Hollow Road, along Meadow Creek, and they found part of one of Gina's bones at Epperly's former hunting grounds. Bodmer says that some of these locations were on their radar, but not all of them. Not only did this instrument hit on Gina's DNA, but it also hit on another, Angela Rader's. Angela went missing from Roanoke in 1977, and back then, they thought she was just another runaway teen, for whatever fucking reason they think that. And that's where it stopped, until Diana met with the Radar family. Diana says she won't stop until she excavates all 8 of the locations and maybe finally finds all of the pieces to this decades-long puzzle. As for Suckstick Stephen, he still claims his innocence, but remains incarcerated at the Lawrenceville Correctional Center in Brunswick County, Virginia. In fact, and this is fun, in 2020, a bill was introduced in Virginia, and if this becomes law, convicted murderers wouldn't gain parole eligibility unless they gave information regarding the victim's remains, which I think is super cool. I mean, if they're required to offer parole, give the inmate this parole requirement. I don't know. Also, and I stand by this, bring back castration for all those rapers out there. And that, my friends, is the story of Gina Renee Hall. As always, I hope that brought a little something to your day. I want these to be kind of interesting and enjoyable, obviously. Again, I appreciate every single person who listens and the support you continue to show. Per usual, I do have an extra story waiting for you on the back end today, so stick around for that. Okie dokie. Bye-bye. Love you. Cheers, everyone. Hello again. In honor of the new year, I bring you a New Year's Eve massacre from just a few years ago, titled New Jersey Teenager Casually Slaughters His Family, written by Aaron Rasmussen of Investigation Discovery. Quote, a New Jersey man who was a teenager when he killed 4 members of his family in a New Year's Eve massacre in 2017 was recently sentenced to serve the remainder of his natural life behind bars. Scott Kalogi, 20, was convicted in February 2022 of the quadruple homicide of his sister Brittany, who was 18, his mother Linda, who was 44, his father Stephen, 42, and his grandfather's partner, Mary Schulz, age 70. At 11:43 p.m. on December 31st, 2017, the Monmouth County Sheriff's Office responded to a report of shots fired at the Kalogi family home in Long Branch. The officer found the 4 victims all dead from gunshot wounds at various locations inside the residence, according to the prosecutor's office. Prosecutor Sean Brennan said these acts were evil, carried out by someone who knew exactly what he was doing. He killed them because he could. He killed them because he wanted to. Brennan said the investigation determined that Scott, who was 16 at the time, researched whether or not the semi-automatic rifle he used in the attack would be effective against bulletproof vests worn by responding officers. And he wore earplugs during the rampage to protect his hearing, or drown out the screams of his family. According to the assistant prosecutor, Scott first lured his mother Linda upstairs during the party and from his darkened room shot her dead. When the killer's father Stephen rushed up to see what was happening, Scott fired his weapon again and killed him. Then, according to Brennan, he walked around his parents' bodies, went downstairs, and, quote, casually murdered his sister Brittany, who was home on break from her freshman year at college, as well as his grandfather's companion, Mary Schulz. Officials say that 12 of the 14 shots the teenager fired that night hit his victims. Sean Brennan noted that although Scott's brother and grandfather were home during the attack and, quote, physically survived, they both will still have to deal with the mental scars of what they saw. Scott was arrested at the scene of the crime and charged as an adult with 4 counts of first-degree murder and a second-degree weapons offense. At the sentencing hearing, Scott's defense attorney, Richard Lamuro, claimed that his client is, quote, severely mentally ill and not a cold-blooded killer. The defendant's paternal grandmother, Carol Kalogi, echoed the statement, telling the court, quote, Scott was a 16-year-old child who recognized that he needed help because of damaging thoughts. Scott told his mother that he was having bad thoughts about killing people, including family members. Although he was found guilty, I do believe Scott's mental condition is the impetus behind that night in 2017, she said. And I'm asking the court for some compassion and understanding in this matter, end quote. The judge sentenced Scott Kalogi to 150 years in prison in connection with the quadruple homicide, and he must serve at least 85% of his sentence, or a total of 128 years, before he becomes eligible for parole. End quote. So yeah, he's never getting out, thank God. But again, that grandma, Carol Kalogi, I'm not throwing any shade. She's probably a loving person. And he probably was very mentally ill. But he fucking killed 4 people. That'll about do it for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed the little extra bit at the end. And I hope you have and had a wonderful, wonderful year. Okie dokie. Bye-bye. Love you.